Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. November 30th, 2020, Abhayagiri Monastery, full moon, Wanpra, Uposatha day. And on the 29th, we wrapped up our first online retreat from Abhayagiri, Thanksgiving retreat. And it went quite well and better than expected. I'm still just amazed that people were practicing in their homes, and at any time they could have just turned the screen off. They could have just, they're in their homes already, so they could have just minimized the window and turned the screen off and laid down or something. And the level to which people committed to it was impressive. Even, getting some feedback afterward that some people were struggling with pain or having a difficulty in the meditation, hindrances in the meditation, but still didn't give up, didn't turn the screen off. They still kept plugging in and being part of the retreat as if they were here. And just found that impressive. And because they did that, then they got the benefit. By the end of the retreat, they got the benefit from doing that kind of practice. So, what can we do? What can we do for ourselves? What can we do for society during these times? These questions come up. We get inquiries, people writing to the contact form on the website. What do you think about what's going on in society, etc.? And from the Buddha perspective, the Dhamma perspective, we could say that we do the practice. That's what we do. When we see aging, sickness, and death, when we see those three heavenly messengers, we respond with the fourth heavenly messenger, which is the samana, and that's the practice. That's the response. That's what we can do for ourselves. That's what we can do for the world. In the verses on striving according to Dhamma, the Buddha says, if you do what's best for yourself, strive for the goal with diligence. If you do what's best for others out of compassion for others, strive for the goal with diligence. Or if you want to do what's most compassionate for yourself and others, then strive for the goal with diligence. So it's like we have the precepts. No matter what, we won't take the life of any living being. No matter what, we won't steal. No matter what, we won't. I'll speak in terms of the 5 precepts, because most people watching the live stream are followers of the 5 precepts. Who'd say, no matter what, I won't commit sexual misconduct. No matter what, I won't tell lies or use harsh speech, wrong speech. No matter what, be committed to sobriety, not taking intoxicants. No matter what, won't be won't engage in things like violence or condoning violence for any reason whatsoever, no matter what. So in Thailand, when they take the 8 precepts, like we do it here, it's in the evening time. So, but in Thailand, the village life, and this may be changing now, but the village life at Wat Pananachat would be around the Uposita days, the lunar observance days, so that would be the weekend for people. And so for the farmers, the villagers, the people who are living off of the land and growing their crops and doing subsistence farming and not working based on a Monday to Friday week here in America, but actually able to take that time off on the lunar observance days, which the day of the week is always changing, and go to the monastery in the morning time, offer food for the meal, and then before the monks take the meal, there would be the request and the giving of the 8 precepts, and then a Dhamma talk, and then we would take the meal. Then there would be, people would do the meal cleanup and probably take a bit of a rest to prepare for the all-night sit. To prepare for the all-night sit, it's quite helpful actually to take a rest, take a bit of a rest during the day, and that can prepare you for doing the all-night sit in more of an effective and clear way. And then because the meal offering is always around 8 a.m. in Thailand, and you just have the one meal a day, and on the lunar observance days, when there's 8 precepts and Dhamma talk, then the meal cleanup will be done around 10 a.m., 10:30, something like that. And there's that bit of time for a rest, and then usually by about 1 p.m., then the lay people are starting to do their sitting and walking meditation. So it's like a day-long retreat. So they're doing their sitting and walking meditation, and then there's a 4:30 p.m. would be the tea time. They'd usually make some sort of special allowable, either a spicy allowable soup drink out of these spicy leaves and chilies, and then you'd have, maybe there'd be some other drinks offered, and then continue practicing. Generally at that time then, the monastic community would do the Patimokkha recitation, and then there would be evening chanting and Dhamma talk and practice into the night. And then, so the lay people, they're all there, they're doing sitting, walking meditation. There'd be usually a drink at midnight tea, and then would continue until the chanting, and the morning chanting on the lunar observance day, like at Wat Nanachat or Wat Nongpapong, would be at 4 a.m. and would go for an hour till 5, and then at 5 would be the closing, and then it's dawn, and then people go back to the village, and the monks go alms round as normal, and that's it. That's the all-night sit in Thailand. So there's that, taking the 8 precepts in the morning time, so then it's like determining them for a day and a night, for that whole day and the night. And then it's nice to see like the morning time, and then the lay people do this very beautiful ceremony at the end, saying, they take a phrase from the suttas, and it's like, we are busy and have much to do, that we take our leave, and then they also do this bowing where they bow and ask forgiveness from Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, take their leave, and then walk back to the village, and you'll see these the elderly grandmas walking together. They've been up all night. They're usually the most stalwart. They're up sitting upright all night. They'll be walking together back to the village and maybe talking about their meditation or the alms food that they're going to give that day. So it's just, you get this feeling, it's incredibly wholesome It's like a deva realm that one creates, that the villagers create by this kind of practice. So that's what we can do. That's what we can do with the practice. The 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts, the 227 precepts, 311 precepts. These are all the best protection. The Buddha said those are the best protection for people. Non-violence is the best protection for people, for oneself. That's there's this phrase in the suttas, with rod and weapon laid aside, with eyes of kindness for all living beings. So that's what we're trying to cultivate. That's the metta. Another thing I was thinking of with this online retreat and then reaching people, a worldwide audience, and one of the retreatants at the end had this expansive kind of gratitude expression of gratitude, saying like very much feeling like it was like metta for the whole world. Like by the end of the retreat, this feeling of goodwill spreading out to the whole world. And the Buddha also has that in stages, like the 4 directions. That's in the teaching, likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th, so above and below, around and everywhere. And to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. So it's like the Buddha has that, he lines out that practice, lays out that practice in terms of like a sense of spreading out. And so you got that sense in a very real way on the Thanksgiving retreat, and seeing everybody there practicing in Singapore and Malaysia and Sri Lanka, South America. Yeah, just get that sense of the goodwill for people spreading out. And this Thanksgiving retreat, it's always been something that it's like a sense of giving back. So recognizing that the monastery is supported by all of these lay people worldwide, and we just have this huge support base that makes this place possible and makes our life as monastics possible. So it's just a little bit. It's we don't do retreats all year. That actually, the Thanksgiving retreat's really the only retreat we offer each year. I mean, there might be here and there retreats that happen ad hoc, but the Thanksgiving retreat's always been the only annual retreat that we offer on a regular basis. And so there's that sense of giving back to the wider community. And we benefit from it as well, from just stopping the schedule. I mean, this is the first time we've ever done the Thanksgiving retreat in the monastery, so we all benefit from stopping the schedule, slowing down a bit. The monastery had a very good feeling. It was very quiet in the monastery, and part of the community was joining in with the retreat, part of the community was up in the forest practicing, and so you get this really good feeling in the monastery. And still the lay people and the anagarkas were still cooking and serving in that way in the kitchen, but otherwise, if they weren't in the kitchen, they got the day off, got to sit in with the retreat. So get this very good vibe built up in the monastery. So like, say, living in what we would consider I guess a difficult time in history. It's just that we just protect ourselves with the sila, and we keep practicing, and we keep getting on with things. We keep doing our contemplations, living the life, and spreading goodwill, and that's what we can do. So we recited the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta this evening, and that's Buddhism. That's a very important sutta. The Four Noble Truths is completely unique to Buddhism as a religion, and lines out the dukkha, but it also lines out anicca and anatta. It's implied, and the teaching of not self is quite unique to Buddhism as well. So the Four Noble Truths, what it leads to is like the Anyakondanya, seeing anicca, seeing impermanence, and knowing that all that arises passes away and is not self. And so that's the Dhamma eye opening. That's when we no longer take refuge in the world. So they call it lokuttara, like it transcends the world. So when we no longer take refuge in the world, that seeing of anicca, what that does, the implication of that is it causes the heart to no longer invest. It's like we've been making a bad investment, and we've been investing in the world being a certain way. And when we invest in the world being a certain way, and this is right now with this election happening, it's a great time for insight if we use it properly, because almost everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but almost everybody's going to be very invested in the things going one way or another. And if we invest the heart in that and it doesn't go the way we want, then we lose that investment. It's like losing money. And so from the outset to say like, well, this is the world. And it's kind of like the Buddha, at a certain point, the Sakyans, his own people, were going to war with a neighboring state. And because it was for the water rights of this river, if you fight over this water, then you all lose out. It's if you fight over the water rights, he said fighting isn't the way to solve the problem. And then he said if you go to war over this, he's trying to intervene with a teaching and save his people. And he says if you go to war over this, then these two sides were so invested in the world that they ended up not heeding the Buddha's advice and going to war. And sure enough, the water flowed red, and that was the end of the Sakyan people. That was the end of the Sakyan kingdom. Powers and stop it or something, but that isn't the way. The Buddha doesn't take refuge in the world, so he's lokuttara. He's transcending the world. So he's got that. It's like Ajahn Ñāṇiko using that phrase "unentangled participation" in his talk that he gave during the Thanksgiving retreat, and using that phrase, it's like the Buddha will give. He'll give advice. He'll tell people, well, if you do this, you'll get this result. If you do that, you'll get that result. But really, it's up to the individual. The Buddha's not there to try to control things and make things go perfectly, or he's not there to try to make the world into the perfect place, because it's really up to individuals to do that for themselves. we have the freedom to do that. In a way, freedom is a burden. We have the freedom to choose. It's like, well, why can't we just be forced to do the right thing? Wouldn't that be great? But we have the burden of freedom. So the burden of freedom is we choose. We can choose whether we go up or down. We can choose whether we use violence or non-violence. We can choose whether we invest in the world or invest in the Dhamma, or that which transcends the world. We have that choice. It's like we can invest. There is the heart, and we can invest the heart in whatever we choose to. It's just. But then there's the delusion which gets in there. So then the craving and the delusion, and it gets in there, and we end up doing things that are harmful. And so I watched Philip and Amadi, a couple friends of ours, they shared some links with me today, and this monk, many of you may know about, Lungpo Jamnian, and he's been visiting the West for many years, and has a group of Western students who he teaches, and I was watching one of these videos of him teaching, one of the more recent teachings he's given, and he's been doing like online Q&As and Zoom sessions, and so like he had this one session he was doing where he's teaching about just the wholesome and the unwholesome, and just really distilling the meaning of just how to practice with the wholesome and the unwholesome. And he said one thing that struck me was that not only do you not put out the unwholesome, but you don't take in the unwholesome. When you don't take in the unwholesome, you don't put out the unwholesome. And when you take in the wholesome, you put out the wholesome. So it's like you can't take in the unwholesome and then put out the wholesome. That's not how it works. So if you take in the unwholesome, you're going to put out the unwholesome. So if you take things in a way that is taken in based on our yoniso manasikara, based on our unwise attention, say attention based on anger, for example. So our attention is directed by our anger, and then we take in the unwholesome, and the unwholesome comes back out. But if our attention is directed by goodwill, by metta, and then we're taking in the wholesome, and the wholesome comes out. So I was struck by that teaching that it's not just what you put out, but it's what you take in as well. And what you take in is going to be based on the way you pay attention to things. So that's just super important. So it's like seeing things in terms of the Four Noble Truths, and metta, and seeing that there's dukkha, there's samudaya, there's the cause of dukkha, there's the cessation of dukkha, and then there's the path. Sometimes it's hard to notice the cessation of dukkha. The Four Noble Truths, what it is like it's lining out like a cause and effect relationship of how dukkha is caused and how it passes away, how it arises and passes away. That's the Four Noble Truths. The second Noble Truth is the arising. Third Noble Truth is the passing away. So that engine of how dukkha arises and passes away, the engine of craving, the engine of kamatanha, bhavatanha, vibhavatanha, with that engine of craving, then dukkha is arising. And then with the application of the Noble Eightfold Path, then the dukkha is ceasing. And so that's like the Buddha's just it's very simple when seen in that way. Like there's the arising, this is why it arises. There's the ceasing, this is why and how it ceases. And it doesn't just cease with the Noble Eightfold Path, but it ceases without remainder. It ceases without remainder with the patipada, the practice. Patipat, like patipada has a sense of like walking. So you're walking the path. The path is to be walked. The path is to be cultivated. When we have standards of behavior, like a sense of training, we call that the kichawata, or in Thai they say kawat, so that there's that sense of training and having principles for one's life. So not only is there the precepts, but then in the monastery we have this kawat, which is the training standards. And when we have training standards, there's just ways of doing things that makes everything very clean, neat, beautiful, as we say in Thai, rip roy. So when things are clean and bright, then that we bring that back in. The heart is clean and bright. So we keep things clean. We keep this meditation hall clean. We keep our kuti, our huts. We keep them clean. One thing we can do if the mind is getting dark or if we're struggling, we can take on a determination just to clean our hut every day. Just mop the floor every day. Clean the shrine in our hut every day. Sweep every day. Make it just totally immaculate, and then see what that does. The result tends to be good. When everything is in its proper place, and it doesn't need to be like overly kind of military style where everything's like stacked in descending rows or whatever, but just making it like bright, that sense of like brightness, cleanliness. It has a good effect. So one is we have the sila, the virtue, and then we have like these training standards, and that creates this kind of very bright and wholesome attention, the way we pay attention to things, and we get the sampajanya, not just the sati, but we get the sampajanya, the way we do paying attention, like is each little corner clean, is each little nook and cranny clean. And Longpor Ban likes to talk about like the defilements. The defilements like to go where there doesn't need to be something done. They don't want to clean all the dirty corners and the places where the dust hides or that don't normally get cleaned. It needs to be cleaned. We look at all those places where things still need. What we try to do is we polish the Buddha's back, so nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to see the backside of the Buddha image. So but polishing the Buddha's back is very much like we clean the back of the Buddha, and even though nobody sees it, we still do it. And there's a story of the hardworking, and like nobody really knew who he was, but the king really relied on him, and but because he never really got any recognition or nobody really knew who he was, this particular minister went to the king one day with a question. He said, it's like you tell me all about polishing the Buddha's back, and yeah, I've been doing that for a long time now, but like, don't you think I should get some sort of recognition or status or something like from this? And the king said, I don't have to give you anything for what you do. He said, if you polish the Buddha's back long enough, then it'll spill out into the front. And then, so I think that's really how it goes. Like we do things and we don't get seen, but then after a long time, those qualities, these qualities that we cultivate through the practice and the training standards of things like keeping things clean, or the way we wash our bowls, or the way we do the chanting on a daily basis, or whatever we do in the monastery, it builds up over time, and then those qualities in the heart start to build up. But it takes time. So in just my opinion, this is what we can do for the world and for ourselves. This is something good that can be done. This is like these are some suggestions, or perhaps in circles. A lot of the suttas, a lot of the teachings the Buddha gave, they end with the person or people he's talking to saying, this is wonderful, this is marvelous. It's as if somebody turned on a light in the dark so it could suddenly see, or it's like somebody turned upright a container which was overturned, and now it's upright, now it can be made use of. So, and then going for refuge, Buddha Dhamma Sangha, that's the next step. So I won't, don't have so much to say, won't go on too long, don't have so much to offer, but I'll just leave it at that for this evening.